Running events are the most fundamental events at Little Athletics. Now, depending on the little athlete's age, the events can range from short sprints through to middle distance races. While running is simple, there are a few important steps to follow at Little Athletics to make sure that all events are conducted as safely as possible. Firstly, always look before crossing a running track. There may be more than one race taking place at a time, for example on a separate sprints track, so always check what's happening on each track before crossing. Secondly, in some age groups and events, little athletes may be allowed to wear spiked shoes. To avoid accidents from spiking themselves or others, spikes should only be put on just prior to the start of a race and removed immediately afterwards. Spikes are not allowed in races that aren't run completely in lanes. How to start a race well is an important skill to learn. The best method for little athletes is the standing start because it's simple to learn and can be used in all events. The more complicated crouch start in sprints should only be attempted as the little athlete gets older and stronger. In events that are run entirely in their lanes, the starter gives 3 commands. On your marks, set, and then the bang of the gun, which then starts the race. When the starter calls on your marks, the little athlete should place 1 foot behind the starting line, but not on it. It will usually be the leg opposite to what they would kick a ball with. The other foot is placed back about 1 foot space and is pointed directly down the track. The heel is lifted off the ground. When the starter calls set, the little athlete bends forward at the hips and knees. At this point, the opposite arm and leg should be forward and the little athlete should be directing their vision at the ground, about 1 metre in front of their feet. When all the little athletes are still, the starter can commence the race by firing the starter's gun. At this stage, the little athlete should drive their arms and legs and step through with their back foot first. The procedure for starting in middle distance races is similar, except that there is no set command. When the starter calls on your marks, the little athlete should take the stance they would usually take on set in a sprinting race. Running is a natural activity, but how fast a little athlete can run can be improved by focusing on some basic techniques. In sprinting races, little athletes must stay in their lanes. On straight parts of the track, this means running in as straight a line as possible. On curves, this means running on the inside edge of their lane, but not too close to the line because you aren't allowed to step on or over the line. The little athlete's eye should always be looking forward ahead of them and not looking behind because it slows them down. Little athletes will usually run faster if they try to stay relaxed and feel tall while they are running. The main difference between middle distance races and sprinting races is that in middle distance races, little athletes don't have a lane that they need to stay in. When there is the need to pass another competitor, the little athlete should go around them on their right-hand side. It is also important in longer races for the little athlete to pace themselves and not run too fast at the beginning. The race finishes when the torso of the little athlete crosses the line. The torso is the part of the body from above the waist to below the neck, but does not include the arms or hands. Important rules to remember about the start are: the starter should not start the race until the timekeepers are ready. The starter should wait until all the athletes are still before calling set or firing the gun. If an athlete false starts, the starter fires the gun a second time. If the same athlete false starts a second time, they are disqualified, but this rule varies in some states. Timekeepers have the job of timing each little athlete in the race. It is important to start timing the race as soon as you see either the flash or the smoke from the starter's gun. Because sound travels much slower than light, waiting to hear the sound will make the time inaccurate. Time from stopwatches are recorded to the nearest tenth of a second, always rounding up any non-zero number in the hundredths of a second to the next tenth. Hurdles is a sprinting race that includes evenly spaced obstacles. The goal is to run as fast as possible, clearing all hurdles with little interference to the athlete's running action. The hurdles used in little athletics are very different from those used by adults. Their height is much lower and they are designed to collapse in the direction of running when hit. Because of this, it is important that they are only ever attempted to be cleared in the direction intended. Hurdling is an advanced technique that takes a lot of practice. The basic idea is to try to run over the hurdles compared to jumping over them. The little athlete should think of clearing the hurdles by taking one large stride over it. This is done by leading with one leg extended over the hurdle and trailing the other to the side of the body. Some common mistakes that little athletes make are taking small, hesitant steps between the hurdles and losing momentum when clearing the hurdle, jumping up rather than hurdling over the barrier. All of the rules for running races are used for the hurdles. Little athletes are not deliberately allowed to knock down hurdles during the race, but there is no penalty if they are knocked down accidentally. The horizontal jumps consist of long and triple jump. Both events commence with a run-up and end with a little athlete in the sandpit. On the runway, there is a takeoff area. Depending on the age of the little athlete, there are two types of takeoff areas that might be used. A takeoff area covered in sand or chalk, or a takeoff board painted onto or fixed into the runway. It is important that care is taken when crossing the runway. Always look both ways before crossing to avoid collisions. Also, make sure that there are no loose objects in the sand before any little athlete jumps into the pit. A fast, controlled and accurate run-up to the takeoff area is an important part of both events. The youngest little athletes should begin their run-up approximately 10 metres back from the takeoff area. As little athletes get older, a rough guide to the length of their run-up is their age plus or minus 1 metre. The aim of the long jump is to jump as far as possible into the sandpit from the takeoff area. The little athletes should keep their eyes up during the run-up and not look down at the takeoff area. When they reach the takeoff area, they should leave the ground off one foot and drive the knee of their other leg and their arms high into the air. The little athlete lands in the sandpit on 2 feet, with their feet close together and their knees bending on impact. The aim of the triple jump is to land as far into the pit as possible after completing a hop, step and jump from the takeoff area. To remember the hop, step and jump sequence, the little athlete should think of landing on the same foot, then the other foot, finally with both feet. When they reach the takeoff area, the first phase for the little athlete is to hop. The athletes land on the same foot as they take off from. The second phase is the step. After landing from the hop, take a bound forward, landing on the opposite leg. The final phase is the jump. From the step position, jump into the sandpit. Like in the long jump, the little athlete should land in the sandpit on 2 feet, with their feet close together and their knees bending on impact. It is important for the little athlete to try to keep the phases as even as possible and keep their speed up through each phase. A common mistake is for the hop to be too high or long. The long jump and triple jump are both measured using a measuring tape. The end of the tape is attached to a spike, which is placed on the mark in the sand made by the little athlete that is closest to the takeoff area. For example, if the little athlete falls backwards when they land in the pit, the measuring tape is placed on the closest point to the takeoff area, not to where the feet landed. Where the other end of the tape measure is placed depends on the type of the takeoff area used. When a takeoff area covered in sand or chalk is used, the measurement is made to the mark made by the little athlete's foot that is closest to the sandpit. If the little athlete's foot crosses over the edge of the takeoff area closest to the sandpit, the performance is a foul and no distance is recorded. If the athlete takes off before the back edge of the takeoff area, the tape is placed on the back edge. When a takeoff board is used, the measurement is taken from the edge of the board closest to the sandpit, regardless of where the little athlete jumped from. The measurement must be taken perpendicular to the takeoff line or its extension. The goal of the high jump is to jump as high as possible, clearing a bar that is gradually raised in height. The competition is over for the little athlete when they have 3 consecutive failures. For the high jump to be conducted safely, appropriate landing bags and covers should always be used, and the area which the little athlete jumps from should not be wet or slippery. The best technique for little athletes to use when learning how to high jump is called the scissors. The more advanced Fosbury flop, which requires little athletes to land on their back, should only be attempted when they have mastered the scissors technique. The scissors is done using a straight run-up of 8 to 10 strides from an angle approximately 30 degrees to the bar. When the little athlete reaches the jumping area, the leg closest to the bar is driven up and over the bar first. Both legs are lifted forward in a scissors action over the bar. The little athlete should preferably land on their feet or sitting in an upright position, but not land on their back. The height of the bar should be measured at its centre using a rod that is placed perpendicular to the ground. A jump is recorded as a failure if the bar is knocked off the supports by the little athlete or if they touch the landing bags prior to clearing the bar. There is a mistaken idea that if the little athlete leaves the landing bags prior to the bar falling off the supports, that the jump is not a failure. This is untrue. There are two throwing events done from a circle, shot put and discus. The size and weight of both implements are modified to make them suitable for each age group, and the aim of the event is to project the implements as far as possible. It is critical that all safety precautions are followed for a throwing event and that everyone remains aware when a shot put or discus is being thrown. The discus should only ever be thrown from within a safety cage or net, and the little athlete throwing the discus should be the only person in the cage at the time. The only people who should be in front of the little athlete throwing a shot put or discus are the volunteers assisting in the event. The volunteers should never turn their back on the throwing circle. After a throw is complete, the shot put or discus should be carried back to the throwing circle and never thrown or rolled back. Hold the shot by placing it at the base of the fingers, not in the palm of the hand. It is supported by the three middle fingers, with the thumb and the little finger giving balance to each side of it. The shot is held in a position close to the neck, just under the jawbone, with the elbow of the throwing arm raised to the rear. The non-throwing arm points in the direction of the throw. When the little athlete is ready, they swing the front of their body forward as they shift their weight from their back foot to the front foot. The shot is put and not thrown. The arm moves in a forward direction away from the neck only. Any backward movement of the arm that moves the shot away from the neck is not allowed and results in the throw being counted as a foul. When the little athlete has mastered putting the shot from a standing position, they may move to a more advanced technique, such as incorporating a sidestep or a glide across the circle prior to putting the shot. The discus is held flat against the palm, with the edge of the discus sitting on the pads of the first joints of the fingers. The thumb rests on the back of the discus. In preparation for throwing, the discus is held up in front of the eyes with the throwing hand on top and the non-throwing hand underneath for support. When the little athlete is ready, they swing the front of their body forward as they shift their weight from the back foot to their front foot. The discus is released off the index finger out of the front of the hand in a flat spin. Little athletes are not allowed to leave the circle from its front half after their throw, so it's good practice for them to always enter and leave the circle from the same direction, the back. During or after a throw, touching the ground outside of the front half of the throwing circle or the top of the stop board that may be used in the shot put results in a foul. Also, the shot of the discus needs to land completely within the landing sector or the throw is a foul. On the line is out. The end of the measuring tape is attached to a spike, which is placed where the implement first lands. The tape is extended back to the middle of the throwing circle. The measurement is taken on the inner edge of the circle or stop board to the closest centimetre, always rounding any part of the centimetre down. Javelin is a throwing event that is done using a straight run-up. Depending on which state the little athlete lives in, the event is introduced in different age groups, and some states may introduce the event using the modified turbo jav. It is critical that all safety precautions are followed in the javelin and that everyone remains aware when a javelin is being thrown. The only people who should be in front of the little athlete throwing a javelin are the volunteers assisting in the event. The volunteers should never turn their back on the throwing runway. Javelin should always be carried with their tip facing the ground, and after a throw is complete, the javelin should be carried back to the throwing circle and never thrown or slid back. The javelin is held by the little athlete at the string grip using only one hand. It should be gripped firmly in a way that allows the javelin to lie diagonally along the palm. Little athletes should use the grip that feels most comfortable for them. The three major grips are the first finger grip, where the javelin is gripped between the first finger and the thumb. The second finger grip, where the javelin is gripped between the second finger and the thumb. The claw, V grip, where the javelin is gripped in the V between the index and the middle finger. It is recommended that while learning the event, that the little athletes only use a 3 to 5 step run-up prior to delivering the javelin. To prepare for the throw, the javelin is drawn back until the tip is close to the eye and the javelin is aligned in the throwing direction. The elbow of the throwing arm is kept up and the palm of the throwing hand is pointed toward the sky. The non-throwing arm is pointed in the direction of the throw. At the delivery stride, the javelin is pulled over the shoulder, keeping it aligned with the throwing direction. The little athlete must not cross the arc line at the front of the runway during or after the throw. The javelin must land within the sector on its pointy end to be a valid throw. On the line is out. The javelin does not have to stick into the ground to be a fair throw. If the javelin lands flat or on its opposite end, the throw is a foul. It is good practice to remove javelins from the ground in the same direction that they entered. The end of the measuring tape is attached to a spike, which is placed where the implement first lands. The other end of the tape is extended back to a mark in the middle of the runway. The measurement is taken from the inside edge of the arc to the nearest centimetre, rounding any part centimetre down. Race walking is a race that requires little athletes to use a specific technique to move across the ground. It differs from running in 2 ways. In race walking, one foot has to be in contact with the ground at all times, and the support leg must be straightened when it first contacts the ground under the body. In practice, this means that a heel and toe action is used, with the front foot making contact with the ground before the back foot leaves it. The knee of the support leg cannot be bent as it passes underneath the body. Race walking is judged using the naked eye. Learning to properly judge the race walk requires training through your state association. At your centre, there may not be a qualified walks judge. If your centre is in this situation and you are responsible for judging, focus on encouraging little athletes to concentrate on their technique and only disqualify them if they are blatantly breaking the rules.